Hey, okay, this is for sure a short video I wanted to make for the people who have been listening to me read my story, Song of Mornius. I just wanted to apologize for the lull. I am trying to take my time with the last of this chapter I'm working on. There might be one more after. Well, there will for sure be one after. But that might be it. There's probably 2 more chapters to go, counting the one that I'm working on. And it's really important to me that I do it right, so I'm kind of taking my time and writing it only when I'm really doing, when I'm in the mood to write. Definitely there are days when I have to force it, and every time I do that my writing suffers, so I'm kind of waiting to be kind of hot for it, and then I can do these chapters right. But I just want to explain that I am working on chapter 40, I believe it's 49. And it's pretty close to being done. I just have a few more pages and then I have to go through and make it all work. But it's in the works, it's just not out yet. And I also wanted to clarify something, because again, people listening to me reading these chapters, these are rough drafts. These are, I basically just restored them and added to them, but they're rough drafts, and I'm going to find errors after I get the thing, put the reading version as I read it and I put it out there. I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to catch things that I missed or things that I'm going to want to go back and fix. But unfortunately the rough draft is still sitting out there in the form that isn't as good as I would like. So people who are watching the videos of me reading my chapters are not hopefully the final version, if I indeed get this published as an ebook or any kind of book. The final drafts will be a little bit better, hopefully. And the problems that I have caught after I've put the videos up will be fixed. One of the problems that I've had brought to my attention, and I might fix it in the next chapter that not the one I'm working on now, but the final chapter, assuming there's just one more. I will make it a little bit clearer with that final chapter, but at the same time I also think I'm going to have to go back, and this is talking about chapter 48. I'm going to have to go back and maybe make it just a little clearer, because one of the people who's been listening to me read had to listen to it several times before he completely grasped the thing that I really need to get across. It's very important. And the fact that he had to revisit the chapter a couple times to really get it tells me that I haven't made it clear enough. The explanation isn't clear enough, or there's not enough of it, maybe. So I wanted, because that the chapter is lacking in that respect, I wanted to make it very clear to people trying to follow the story. Camron, who is Tarek's brother, who was a human, has been reborn, and he's now a giant. There's a reason he is a giant, and that is the part that is not clear, or was not clear enough. Was not made clear enough in the actual chapter that I put up on YouTube. The reason he's a giant, just before he is kidnapped, at the start of the story, he's kidnapped by the enemy. He and Avalar are good friends. I kind of try to show through the course of the story how very deeply Avalar feels toward Camron, how much he meant to her. I think I do a good job with that. I think I make it very clear that she is equally as heartbroken about Camron's death as Tarek, his brother, is. The reason she's that heartbroken is Giant's friend bond with, and it's not really something they can control. It's just a very strong friendship to the point where they have like a physical need to have some kind of contact, some kind of link. It's actually more like a link almost, with the friend. It's not romantic. It's not like, oh, they're going to be mated for life. Two males can friend bond. Two good friends. Two brothers can friend bond with each other. A brother and sister can friend bond with each other. It's just a very strong friendship that is basically tied into the health of the individual. So if one of them dies, the other one will. It's kind of like when people are married for a very long time, the phenomenon where, you know, the one of them dies, and it's usually not very long after that the other one dies. It's kind of like that. You know, Grevelin and Pony are friend bonded. If Pony died, Grevelin would die, but it wouldn't happen immediately. It would probably take a few months for Grevelin. He would pine away. Now, the opposite is not true. If Grevelin died, Pony would not die, because Pony doesn't friend bond. It's only Grevelin who's friend bonded to Pony. What would have happened if Camron had not been taken, and if Camron had not been killed, and if Avalar had been allowed to continue to become friends or get closer with Camron Florin, she would have friend bonded with him. And humans live considerably less time than giants' lifespan is much shorter, so Camron would have died 40 years later, and that would have spelled a premature death for Avalar. First of all, the giants don't age because right now there's so few of them, and the planet needs the giants to anchor the magic. It's basically the web of Talankai's magic. I kind of get into this earlier in the book, how it's like this web, this net around the planet, but it's basically all part of the planet, and it has anchors, and the anchors are the flesh of giants, water, air, fire, minerals, rocks, basically the elements. And giant flesh is one of those elements, more or less. They're the oldest race on the planet. So giant flesh is one of the elements, if that makes any sense. It's anchor, and it's the strongest of all of them. And the reason it's the strongest is because giants have been killed off almost to the point of extinction. So every giant has this concentrated amount of magic that should be spread out amongst a large population. But because the giants have been exterminated, there's only a few of them compared to the way, you know, several hundred years ago. So the same amount of magic exists in giants. It needs to exist in giants, but is very concentrated. And the old magic, which is basically the consciousness of the planet, the magic, the living whatever essence of the planet, is going to preserve the giants at all costs. One of the things it does is it has stopped them from aging, because until they can repopulate enough, you know, have enough children to build up their numbers, every single giant's life is absolutely crucial. So Avalar, being friend bonded to a human, would spell certain death for her, and that's an imminent threat. It's a threat to the planet and to the life of the planet itself. So it's the planet, which is basically like a living thing. It's you know, it's the magic is basically its essence, its life force. It's a native, natural power that it has. Anyway, it's hard to explain. This is just kind of stuff that's in my head that I'm trying to get across. It defends itself. So when Avalar's on the cliff and she's about to fall, the wind pushes her up. So she's basically, the wind keeps her from falling. The planet will do everything in its power to defend its own life. And part of that is to defend any giant that is threatened. Okay, so now here we have Halram trying to resurrect Camron Florin, and he is totally, absolutely focused on making Camron Florin just who he was, a human being, Derek's brother. He is totally not trying to make Camron a giant. He's trying to make him a human. But the old magic, which is being basically the revised water of the pool, is the old magic in this case, and Avalar's hands in the water, is basically taking what Halram is trying to do and interfering with it, and to save Avalar as a way to protect Avalar from the tendency that giants have, and the fact that she's this close to friend bonding to a human. It makes Camron Florin into a giant. And the reason it does that is self-defense, to protect itself, because any more exposure to Camron and Avalar is going to bond to Camron. So the only way to keep this from being detrimental to the life of the planet is to make Camron also a giant who will not age, and he will not die in 40 years. Giant's natural lifespan is about 150 years. I don't really ever say that in this book, but that's approximately what a normal giant's lifespan would be. So even if if giants produce enough children that they start aging again, the Avalar's lifespan would still be considerably longer than a human's. So that's the gist of what happens in chapter 48. There is a interference of one magic interfering with another, with Horum. The old magic interferes with the new magic. And fine, you're going to do that, fine, but it has to be a giant. For my sake, for the sake of my continued existence, this resurrected life has to be a giant. And that's why this happens to Camron, that he turns out to be a giant. And I'm hoping, it's a lot, you know, it's hard, it's easy to sit here on a video and say, this is how it's supposed to be, and this is why, and this is the rationalization for it, and da-da-da-da-da, but how do you put that in a story, you know, without slowing down the story, you know? You can't have the character suddenly stop and we're going to have discussion now exactly what happened, especially when they're in the middle of a life and death situation about to be attacked by a very pissed off evil character, which is Malian. You know, so the explanation, maybe the fact that it's not very complete and not very clear in chapter 48, maybe I'm not going to add very much more to what's already there, because then we might be a little bit unrealistic. We're not going to suddenly stop and have a conversation about this when there's so much peril going. I mean, the very fact that Horum stops these guys so he can work his magic and create this gift for Tarek, you know, already he's putting them at risk. He's giving Malian more time to, you know, regroup and come back and strike again. So having them delay any longer by sitting around talking about, wow, this is why this happened, because this da-da-da-da-da. So I probably, when I go back and work 48, I'm not going to put a whole lot more description. I might tweak what I have to try to make it a little clearer, but I highly doubt I'm going to add another 2 paragraphs even about explaining this. But in the last chapter of the story, I might have something where Avalar is... we're going to assume she survives. We're not so sure who's going to survive, but let's just pretend, okay, that she does, and that there's a time at the end where she, you know, feels responsible because of her. Camron is now a giant, you know, and maybe she doesn't feel, maybe she feels bad about that, you know, but that's just an idea. I'm not even sure how the last chapter will go. It's kind of, I kind of sort of do, but at the same time, I'm rewriting the end, and it's kind of fun to just see how it goes, you know, what comes to me as I'm writing. So that's it. This was supposed to be a short video. I just want to explain to people, there's like 3 of you reading this. In case you missed it, the reason that Camron is now a giant instead of a human. So if you've been watching, thank you. Bye.